You've undoubtedly come across those stereotypical caveman portrayals. You know the ones, grunting primitive figures clad in ragged animal hides, desperately hurling crude spears at mammoths while huddling around smoky fires in dark caves, enduring short and brutal existences. Nothing could be further from reality. 10 millennia ago, humanity stood at the most crucial turning point in our entire history. These weren't mindless brutes. They were us, intelligent, resourceful, innovative people confronting a world transforming faster than anything we can fathom today. Imagine watching the coastal areas where your ancestors had hunted for countless generations suddenly vanish beneath rising waters. The familiar animals you relied on for sustenance disappearing, replaced by strange new creatures as forests spread across former tundra. Here's what mainstream depictions get completely wrong. Rather than being overwhelmed by these radical changes, humans flourished, developing ingenious solutions that would ultimately shape our modern world. This wasn't some minor local phenomenon. By 10,000 years ago, our species had spread to nearly every inhabitable corner of the planet, crafting unique adaptations for diverse environments. Some communities were domesticating canine companions and experimenting with early cultivation techniques. Others constructed elaborate ceremonial monuments requiring unprecedented cooperation. Some established settlements housing hundreds. Imagine your neighborhood where everyone knows each individual's name, strengths, and life stories. That level of intimate community connection is something we can scarcely comprehend in today's world. Before we begin, your engagement helps sustain this content. Where are you tuning in from? Share your city and current time in the comments. I'm always fascinated reading them. Wait, people in New Zealand listen to historical narratives as bedtime stories? So tonight we're journeying back 10,000 years. But first, get comfortable. Seriously, adjust your pillows. Grab that cozy blanket. This experience deserves your full attention. Your eyes open to a world in transition. Dawn breaks, but nothing like the mornings you're accustomed to with blackout curtains and memory foam mattresses. Your first sensation is the chilly morning air against your exposed face, the only part not buried under layers of insulating furs. You're lying on dried grass bedding, reasonably soft, but nothing resembling your plush mattress back home. The shelter surrounding you is simple yet effective. A circular structure of bent saplings lashed together at the top, the entire framework covered with carefully stitched hides from last season's hunts. Your community's dwellings form a loose circle around the central hearth where last night's fire still glows faintly in the early light. Inside your shelter, you're far from alone. This modest space, perhaps 15 feet across, houses your entire extended family: parents, siblings, possibly grandparents, aunts and uncles. Privacy as we understand it simply doesn't exist. Everyone sleeps communally, sharing warmth and protection. The sounds of breathing, occasional snores, and sleepy murmurs create a familiar backdrop to your awakening. Then the smells hit you: wood smoke, drying herbs hanging from ceiling poles, the earthy scent of unwashed bodies, since daily bathing isn't customary, and something else, the tantalizing aroma of food. Someone's already preparing the morning meal, the fire crackling to life. A voice calls softly from outside. The river's running high again. The world beyond your shelter is transforming in ways visible day by day. Not the slow, imperceptible climate shifts we discussed today, but rapid, dramatic, in-your-face changes. 10,000 years ago, Earth was emerging from its last major ice age. The planet was warming rapidly, not by 2 degrees over a century as we worry about now, but by 7 degrees or more in mere decades in some regions. Glaciers that had dominated landscapes for millennia were retreating northward at a pace you could literally track month by month. My grandmother told me. An older man remarks as he tends the morning fire, carefully adding kindling to build the flames. When she was a child, you couldn't even see the northern valley, just a towering ice wall 20 trees high. Now look at it. You follow his gaze across the settlement to where the landscape opens into a vast, newly revealed valley dotted with meltwater ponds, unfamiliar plants sprouting everywhere. For people living through this era, it wasn't just weather patterns changing, their entire world was being remade. Plant and animal species were shifting territories, some disappearing entirely. The woolly mammoths central to your grandfather's hunting tales? Gone, or nearly so. Enormous glaciers that had locked up Earth's water were melting rapidly, causing sea levels to rise up to 160 feet within just a few generations. Picture watching the ancestral fishing grounds your people had relied on for countless generations disappear beneath the waves, not gradually, but fast enough that elders could point and say, "I used to gather shellfish right where the water is now." The old hunting grounds are gone, a middle-aged woman observes while stirring a pot of morning porridge made from wild grains. My grandfather told stories of hunting great mammoths across the open eastern plains. Now it's all becoming forest. Different animals now. Better eating, though, jokes a young man, patting his stomach. Those big deer that moved and taste far better than mammoth ever did, from what I've heard. You never tasted mammoth, an elder scoffs. Tough meat, but one kill would feed the entire band for weeks. One of the most dramatic changes was occurring along coastlines. As waters rose, vast territories were vanishing beneath the waves. In Europe, an entire region called Dogland, once a fertile plain connecting Britain to the continent, was slowly being claimed by the North Sea. Communities had to adapt or perish, and adapt they did. When familiar animals disappeared, they learned to hunt new ones. When rising waters claimed coastal homes, they moved inland. When traditional plants were replaced by new species, they experimented, learning what was edible, medicinal, or poisonous. This adaptability was humanity's superpower, not brute strength or sharp claws, but our capacity to observe, learn, innovate, and transmit knowledge. You wouldn't recognize many solutions emerging in what's now the Middle East, where some groups were testing a radical concept, deliberately planting seeds rather than just gathering what grew wild. The earliest forms of agriculture were taking shape not through sudden inspiration, but through generations accumulating knowledge about plant growth and reproduction. My cousin's people to the south mentions a visitor to your camp as everyone gathers around the morning fire. They've started doing something odd. They collect seeds from the best grain plants and put them back in the same ground every season. They claim it makes more grain grow there the next year. Why bother? Someone asks. The grains grow everywhere without all that work. Not everywhere, the visitor counters, and not as large as what they cultivate. Plus, they always know exactly where to find them. The concept seemed bizarre to many. Why plant what nature provided freely? But in certain environments, it was beginning to make sense, especially as climate change made food sources less predictable. In these early agricultural experiments lay the seeds of a revolution that would ultimately transform human society forever. But crucially, this transition didn't occur overnight or uniformly. While some groups in the Fertile Crescent were beginning to cultivate plants and domesticate animals like goats and sheep, others worldwide continued as hunter-gatherers, not because they weren't intelligent enough to farm, but because in their environments, foraging remained the superior strategy. The world 10,000 years ago wasn't a single narrative, but thousands of simultaneous stories unfolding across every continent except Antarctica. In places like modern Turkey, people were collaborating to create extraordinary monuments like Göbekli Tepe, massive stone pillars arranged in circles, carved with animal images and abstract symbols. This site predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years, demonstrating social organization and shared purpose that archaeologists once believed impossible for pre-agricultural societies. The people from the Stone Mountains to the south, an elder tells gathered children. They spend half the year moving great stones to build circles for their spirits. Hundreds working together, pulling stones as tall as 10 men. Why would anyone do that? Asks a wide-eyed child. For their gods, the elder explains. They believe the stones connect them to the spirit world. The child frowns, unconvinced. Your people have your own spiritual traditions and rituals. Every group does. Even then, the tapestry of human culture was richly diverse and complex. Meanwhile, in what we now call East Asia, people were crafting some of the world's earliest pottery. In South America, communities were domesticating plants like squash and peppers. Across North America, hunter-gatherers were developing sophisticated landscape management systems using controlled burns to encourage favored food plants. All this innovation occurred without writing systems, metal tools, or wheels, just raw human ingenuity, careful observation, and intergenerational knowledge transfer. Stepping outside your shelter into full daylight, the camp springs to life around you. Children fetch water from the nearby stream, while hunters inspect their weapons and discuss likely deer feeding grounds. Women grind wild grains using stones worn smooth by generations of repetitive motion. An elderly man sits carefully chipping a new stone blade, each precise strike of his hammerstone sending flakes flying in practiced arcs. These aren't the primitive cavemen of Hollywood cliches. They're people with encyclopedic environmental knowledge, intricate social networks, rich spiritual lives, and sophisticated technology. Even if that technology consists of stone, bone, wood, and hide rather than metal and plastic. Consider the skills required to thrive in this world. You'd need to recognize hundreds of plant species, which were edible, medicinal, or poisonous, plus when and where to find them. You'd require intimate understanding of animal behavior to hunt successfully. You'd need to manufacture tools, construct shelters, preserve food, treat injuries, navigate without maps, predict weather patterns, maintain close-knit social relationships, and pass all this knowledge to future generations. The river's higher than yesterday, reports a young woman returning with water. If it keeps rising, we'll need to relocate to higher ground. Again, groans an older man. We just settled here at the last full moon. The upstream ice must be melting faster this season, explains the elder. Every year the warmth comes earlier. This was daily reality during rapid climate shifts. Flexibility wasn't just useful, it was essential for survival. Unlike our modern infrastructure that makes quick adaptation difficult, these people could pack up an entire community and move within a day if necessary. Their possessions were few but precious, meticulously crafted tools representing hours of skilled labor, preserved foods for lean times, containers of hide or woven fibers, perhaps some personal ornaments or sacred objects. Everything needed to be portable, durable, and worth its weight for a mobile people. But not all groups were constantly nomadic. In resource-rich areas, some communities became more sedentary, staying put for months or even years. This wasn't necessarily a step toward agriculture and civilization, as older historical narratives suggested. Sometimes staying put simply made better sense than moving around. The camps that stay longer start looking different. Observes a woman repairing a shelter. The structure is more substantial than your hide dwelling, a bent sapling framework covered with arranged bark sheets. We'll be here through summer at least. Worth making it stronger. Last heavy rain leaked through there. She points to a roof section. What about those southern people who build with mud bricks? Asks a helper. Too much work, she laughs. And what happens when you need to follow the herds? Can't carry a mud house on your back. This shelter technology represents a middle ground, more permanent than basic lean-tos, designed to last a season or more, but not truly fixed architecture. It's perfectly adapted for communities that stay put for extended periods, but still move seasonally with resource availability. Hand me that binding cord, the woman says. Her helper passes what looks like ordinary plant fiber rope, another sophisticated technology. Creating strong, durable cordage was essential for everything from bowstrings and fishing lines to shelter construction. Different plants yielded fibers with unique properties, some stronger, some more flexible, some more rot-resistant. Processing these fibers into usable cordage was a specialized skill. 3 strands twisted together, she demonstrates, makes it stronger than one thick strand, less likely to snap. This principle, that multiple thin elements arranged properly outperform single thick ones, appears in technologies across cultures and eras. It's not coincidence, but fundamental engineering insight discovered millennia before formal engineering existed. Elsewhere in camp, a young man shapes a curved wooden stave, his first bough. Not just any wood works, he explains, sensing your interest. This tree grew on sunny, rocky slopes. Slower growth makes it stronger. He shows how one side uses heartwood, resists compression, while the other uses sapwood, flexes without breaking. An intuitive understanding of material properties gained through observation rather than material science. An experienced hunter inspects his progress. String. Deer's sinew from the hind leg. The youth replies proudly. Saved since winter. The elder nods approval. Sinew, animal connective tissue, was among nature's strongest fibers, perfect for bowstrings. When dried, it shrinks, adding tension to the bow's design. Even arrows represent multiple integrated technologies, straight shoots for shafts, stone points for big game, hardened wood tips for birds, feathers for stabilization, and adhesives to bind everything. Those adhesives themselves were technological marvels, typically made from rendered animal hooves or fish swim bladders mixed with pine resin, sometimes reinforced with plant fibers or crushed charcoal. The recipes were complex, perfected over generations of trial and error. The binding pitch needs just the right consistency, advises the elder. Too thick and it cracks when dry. Too thin and it won't hold. Near the central hearth, women demonstrate another crucial technology, cooking stones. Not all rocks work for stone boiling. Some explode when heated. These river rocks, explains an expert selecting smooth specimens, heat evenly and rarely fracture. She arranges them at the fire's edge to warm gradually, preventing thermal shock. My mother used clay pots for cooking, comments an observer. Where'd she learn that? Asks another, surprised. From people east of the hills. They shape river clay and fire it until hard as stone, can place it right in the flames. Too heavy to carry, dismisses the stone cooking expert. And when they break, they're useless. At least baskets can be repaired. This highlights how ancient societies evaluated innovations, not automatically adopting better technologies, but assessing practical fit with existing lifestyles. For mobile groups, pottery's weight and fragility often outweighed its benefits. As afternoon arrives, a trader from another band appears with exotic items, seashells from distant shores, colorful minerals, and a small black stone knife. From people near the big water, he explains. They'll trade for good furs and red ochre. Trade networks were another sophisticated ancient technology, social systems for exchanging resources across ecological zones. Materials like obsidian, volcanic glass for ultra-sharp tools, traveled hundreds of kilometers from their sources. Shells, amber, and pigments moved even farther, primarily as decorative or ritual items. That obsidian knife, says your band's leader examining the glossy black blade. How many furs? 3 prime winter fox pelts, the trader counters. Or 5 rabbit. Steep, mutters someone. It cuts twice as well as flint, argues the trader, and makes cleaner cuts for hide work. These exchanges weren't just economic transactions, but information conduits, news from distant regions, technological ideas, stories, and cultural practices spreading along kinship and trade routes like an ancient internet. Nearby, a woman crafts a delicate necklace, drilled shell beads alternating with animal teeth and amber chunks. For my daughter's coming-of-age ceremony, she explains, showing how she drills tiny holes using a stone point spun between her palms. Each bead tells part of our band's story. This adornment technology might seem frivolous compared to survival tools, but beads and ornaments were among humanity's most consistent creations across cultures. They served crucial social functions, marking identity, status, group membership, and life transitions. The shells came from over 100 kilometers away, evidence of vast trade networks. Some ancestral shell beads have been found thousands of kilometers from their ocean origins. The amber is from my grandmother's necklace, she adds, and she got it from her grandmother before her. Objects moved not just across space, but through time, heirlooms connecting generations, carrying memory and identity. In a pre-literate world, these items served as physical links to the past. As evening approaches, a musician brings out a hollow log with stretched hide, a drum. Another produces a bone flute. Music technology ranks among humanity's oldest innovations, with evidence of instruments dating back at least 40,000 years. New song from the Western people announces the flutist before playing a haunting melody. The drummer joins with a steady rhythm. Soon people begin dancing, another form of technology using the body itself as a tool for expression, community bonding, and sometimes ritual purposes. The movements aren't random, but follow precise patterns. They say it calls the spring animals, someone explains. Dance the deer's path, and deer will follow. This represents another technology type, conceptual systems of ritual practice designed to influence the world through what we might call symbolic or psychological means, but which participants experienced as practical and real. Darkness falls completely, bringing light technologies to the fore. Someone adds special resins to the fire that burn brighter and cleaner. Others produce stone lamps, shallow bowls filled with animal fat, and plant fiber wicks providing portable illumination. In deep winter, an elder tells children gathered around. When darkness comes early and stays late, these lamps become as vital as spears. Without light, we couldn't craft tools or clothing during long nights. The technologies surrounding you aren't primitive or simple, but diverse, specialized, and sustainable, using renewable local resources to meet every need from survival to artistic expression. Each item represents generations of accumulated knowledge about materials, processes, and techniques. What's most striking is how seamlessly integrated everything is, not compartmentalized like modern technology, but woven into daily life's fabric. The spear maker understands animal behavior. The basket weaver knows where and when to harvest materials. The cook recognizes which plants need specific preparation methods. This integrated knowledge system allowed human adaptation to nearly every terrestrial environment, from Arctic tundra to tropical rainforests, coasts to mountains. As you settle for the night, watching firelight dance on shelter walls, consider how different this technological world is from ours. No electricity, metals, or fossil fuels. Yet within its parameters, it was incredibly sophisticated and effective, enabling survival and even thriving in environments that would challenge most modern humans stripped of technological support systems. These tools, shelters, clothing, and conceptual systems weren't steps toward real technology, but complete functional systems perfectly adapted to their time and purpose. Neither better nor worse than what followed, just different. And as you drift toward sleep, warmed by furs made possible by sophisticated hunting and high-processing technologies, sheltered by structures representing deep environmental understanding, your final thought might be appreciation for those ancient innovators whose technological foundations still underpin our world in ways we rarely recognize. A child's laughter shatters the morning stillness as youngsters chase each other around the central hearth. Their game halts abruptly when an elder calls out, "If you've got energy to run, you've got energy to work." Her stern tone belies the twinkle in her eyes. Grab your baskets. The spring roots won't dig themselves. The children groan dramatically but comply, each retrieving a small woven container sized perfectly for their stature. In this world, work and play aren't rigidly separated but fluidly interwoven, with children participating in food gathering from their earliest steps. Their energy could be productively channeled. "Can we check the snares first?" pleads the oldest boy, about 10 winters old. The woman considers this compromise. "Fine, but be quick. And remember—" I know, the boy interrupts. "If anything's caught, don't try to free it ourselves. Get an adult." Food procurement dominated daily life 10,000 years ago, but not in the desperate, hand-to-mouth struggle often imagined. Most communities maintained sophisticated systems combining hunting, fishing, trapping, and plant gathering, diversified approaches that spread risk and ensured someone usually returned with sustenance, even when others came back empty-handed. As the children scamper toward the forest edge where small game snares were set yesterday evening, the camp's daily rhythms fully awaken. Food preparation from yesterday's gathering commences at several hearths. "Too bitter," declares an elder after tasting a cooked root. Needs longer soaking. Or perhaps it's just not ready yet, suggests a younger woman. Last year we didn't harvest these until the moon was fuller. This casual exchange reveals a crucial survival skill, precise knowledge of when specific plants reached peak edibility. Harvest too early or late, and the same species might prove less nutritious, unpalatable, or even toxic. This wisdom wasn't recorded in books, but preserved through constant observation and intergenerational dialogue. Nearby, a man grinds acorns in a stone mortar, the rich nutty aroma identifying his task. A dietary staple in many regions, acorns required significant processing to remove bitter tannins before consumption. Third soaking, he explains. Almost sweet enough now. In another area, two women collaborate on pemmican, pounding dried meat into powder, mixing it with rendered fat and dried berries. This high-calorie travel food would sustain hunting parties on extended trips or provide emergency rations during lean periods. We'll need more before the summer journey, one remarks. Last year we ran out by the third day. The variety of food processing techniques on display is staggering. Drying, smoking, fermenting, grinding, soaking, leaching. Each method developed to make specific foods safer, more digestible, longer lasting, or palatable. These weren't accidental discoveries, but systematic approaches to food security refined over countless generations. A shout from the forest announces the children's return. Rabbit in the third snare, the oldest boy calls excitedly. A fat one. An older youth goes to help retrieve the catch. Even a single rabbit represents significant resources, immediate nutrition plus fur for sewing, bones for tools, and sinew for binding. Nothing would be wasted. Good hunting weather, comments an elder watching hunters prepare to depart. East wind means deer won't scent you coming. 3 men and 2 women check their weapons and secure carrying cords. This party seeks larger prey than rabbits, perhaps deer or wild boar. We'll check the ridge path first, says the lead hunter, a muscular woman around 40. Saw fresh tracks there yesterday. What about the valley? Asks a man adjusting his otlotl, spear thrower. Too soon, she replies confidently. New grass isn't high enough yet. They'll still be on higher ground. This exchange reveals another dimension of hunting knowledge, understanding animal behavior so intimately that movements could be predicted based on subtle environmental cues like vegetation growth patterns. Successful hunting relied less on strength or speed than on anticipating where game would be before they arrived. As the hunting party departs, their movements display practiced efficiency, spreading in formation suggesting hundreds of similar excursions. Decisions emerge through brief consultations based on each member's observations rather than rigid hierarchy. Meanwhile, the gathering expedition prepares, larger than the hunting party, comprising several elder women, younger adults, and most children old enough to help. They carry specialized tools, digging sticks, cutting implements, baskets of various sizes. We'll start at the sunny slope, directs the senior gatherer. Spring beauty should be up by now. Then check the wetlands for cattail shoots. What about the hillberries? Asks a younger woman. Still too early. The elder shakes her head. Another half moon, perhaps. Contrary to stereotypes of rigid gender roles, hunter-gatherer divisions of labor were often fluid. While patterns existed, they reflected practical considerations rather than ideology. Some women were skilled hunters. Some men excelled at plant gathering. You're with me today? The elder tells a teenage boy. Time you learn spring plants properly. You nearly poisoned yourself with false carrots last year. The boy flushes but nods. This is how specialized knowledge transferred through direct, real-world instruction rather than formal classrooms. With both hunting and gathering parties departed, the camp seems quieter but remains active. Those staying behind include nursing mothers, elders, the temporarily injured, and people engaged in essential crafts like tool-making or hide preparation. Near one shelter, a thoughtful discussion unfolds among respected members. The water's rising faster this year, observes a gray-haired man gesturing toward the nearby river. If this continues, we'll need to move to the higher camp earlier than usual. But the fish are running strong, counters another. If we leave too soon, we miss peak fishing. What about the old marsh camp? Suggests a woman wearing an intricate shell necklace denoting status. Higher ground, but still river accessible. This seemingly casual conversation actually represents sophisticated governance. Major decisions like relocation required balancing multiple factors: food availability, safety, shelter options, resource proximity. The apparent informality masked complex consensus-building processes. Unlike the strict hierarchies that would emerge in agricultural societies, most hunter-gatherers practiced assertive egalitarianism. Leadership shifted based on who had relevant skills for specific challenges, with major decisions requiring group consent. We should send scouts to check the marsh camp first, proposes a quiet listener. See if others have claimed it this season. This mention of territorial considerations highlights another social dimension. While boundaries were fluid compared to modern nations, groups recognized certain areas as their primary ranges or shared zones where multiple bands had usage rights. Conflicts occurred but were often resolved through negotiation rather than warfare, which was costly for all involved. By midday, people working near camp gather around hearths, drawn by cooking aromas. A large flat stone serves as a griddle where someone prepares seed flatbread. New recipe, explains the cook, a middle-aged man with burn-scarred forearms. More small brown seeds, less grass seed, holds together better. He flips a bread without it breaking, culinary experimentation that would eventually lead to agricultural development. The meal is communal, everyone contributing and receiving shares, a cornerstone of hunter-gatherer societies that functioned as risk management, ensuring even unsuccessful hunters ate. A woman returns with a string of fish, adding them to the communal pot without hesitation despite her hours of skilled labor. When the hunting party returns with a young deer suspended on poles, they too contribute their prize immediately to the shared food supply without tallying individual contributions. Clean kill with the first spear, boasts one hunter. Lucky throw, teases another. Wind shifted just as you released. Luck or skill, we eat tonight. Mediates an elder, ending the friendly rivalry. Gatherers return gradually, some with baskets overflowing with spring roots and greens, others with modest collections. Children proudly present their contributions, receiving disproportionate praise that reinforces skill development. The elder gatherer carries something special, early spring flowers. Not for eating, she explains, moving to a quiet area with earthen mounds arranged in a circle. For remembering, she places the blooms on one mound, whispering words too soft to hear. Graves maintaining connection with departed community members. This spiritual dimension was seamlessly integrated into daily life rather than segregated as religion. Natural world, human community, and spiritual beliefs formed a unified whole. As the communal meal assembles, distribution follows subtle patterns. Elders receive choice portions. Children are served early. Nursing mothers get extras of certain foods believed to enhance milk production. Successful hunters and gatherers don't claim larger shares despite their contributions, a social system prioritizing communal welfare over individual accumulation. Tell us about the great marsh hunt again, a child requests. An elder smiles and launches into a familiar community story about an epic hunting success. Entertainment blending education, cultural transmission, and social bonding. Without written records, oral tradition served as library, archive, and historical repository. As the meal progresses, you notice social dynamics. Some individuals command more attention. Family groups cluster together. Casual physical contact abounds, shoulders touching, children in laps, people sharing choice morsels, revealing intimate bonds. My mother's brother's daughter joins us next moon, announces a young woman during a lull. Her band lost 3 to sickness last winter, too few to remain viable. This matter-of-fact statement reveals a crucial adaptive mechanism, fluid group composition. While core family bonds remained important, band membership adjusted based on circumstances, resource availability, social conflicts, marriage patterns, or demographic shifts like illness. Is she a good worker? Someone asks practically. Strong gatherer, comes the reply. Knows marsh plants well. This fluidity helped maintain optimal group sizes, large enough for collective security and labor sharing, but small enough to avoid depleting local resources too quickly. Anthropologists suggest the cognitive limit for stable human groups is around 150 individuals, Dunbar's number, with hunter-gatherer bands typically numbering 20 to 50 people, forming larger tribal associations that gathered periodically. As afternoon wanes, community activities shift. Hunters process the deer systematically, meat separated for immediate use or preservation, hide prepared for tanning, bones sorted for tools, sinew carefully extracted, even the brain preserved for hide processing. Gathered plants undergo various preparations too, some cooked immediately, others dried or stored. Seeds are meticulously sorted, some for consumption, others saved for replanting or as famine insurance. These we save, instructs a woman sorting tiny seeds, to plant near our summer camp when warmth returns fully. This represents proto-agriculture, deliberate replanting of preferred species to increase their density beyond natural levels, a widespread practice that laid conceptual groundwork for true farming. These food-related activities double as social occasions, people working together while talking, laughing, storytelling, singing, and teaching. A young woman queries an elder about plant preparation. A father shows his son proper meat-cutting techniques. Friends grind seeds while alternating between practical talk and personal stories. Children sort berries while an older child recounts a fanciful animal tale. No, like this. A woman gently corrects a youngster's basket weaving technique. Tighter weave keeps small seeds from falling through. Such teaching moments occurred constantly through daily interaction, knowledge flowing from experience to novice, sometimes across conventional age or status lines when someone possessed specialized skills. As evening approaches, social dynamics subtly shift. Daylight's practical work concludes. People gather in smaller family or friendship groups. Conversations become more intimate. Children play quieter games or listen to elders' stories. An older woman sings softly while embroidering a hide garment with dyed porcupine quills. Others join in the familiar harmony. Song of the Spring Return, someone explains. We sing it yearly when green things reawaken. This seasonal marking through ritual and art wasn't mere superstition, but encoded ecological knowledge while reinforcing group identity. Near the main hearth, two elders play a stone piece game on a dirt-drawn board, deeply engrossed while spectators comment on clever or foolish moves. This scene contradicts another stereotype, that ancient lives were consumed by survival with no leisure or abstract thought. Archaeological evidence confirms games, music, and art have been human constants for tens of thousands of years. As full darkness arrives, the community gathers around the strengthened central fire. Food is shared again, lighter than midday but still communal, still following distribution patterns ensuring all needs are met. Conversation flows from practical plans to humorous stories to weather discussions to ancestral reminiscences. Remember when that bear wandered into camp last summer? Sparks a familiar tale and communal laughter at key moments. Shared memories and inside jokes binding people who've lived closely for years. This evening gathering served multiple functions beyond mere nutrition, reinforcing group cohesion, providing conflict resolution through humor and storytelling rather than confrontation, creating space for intergenerational knowledge transfer, maintaining cultural continuity. As people gradually drift to sleep, parents carrying drowsy children, couples walking together talking quietly, elders assisted by younger kin, the camp doesn't shut down uniformly like our electrically lit modern world. Some remain awake tending fires, keeping watch, continuing quiet tasks or conversations, a natural shift system ensuring constant alertness. And as you return to your sleeping space, wrapped again in those practical furs, you might marvel at the social sophistication you've witnessed. This wasn't the brutish struggle for individual survival of popular imagination, but a complex, interconnected system that sustainably supported human communities for millennia. Neither utopian nor dystopian, just profoundly different from modern social organization in its assumptions and outcomes. Dawn arrives gently, the first light filtering through your shelter's smoke hole. The camp stirs slowly, unhurried, a different rhythm from yesterday's bustling preparations. The elder with the shell necklace moves deliberately between dwellings, murmuring to each family group. Full moon rises tonight. We honor the ancestors at the sacred stones. Her words ripple through camp, transforming the day's energy. Children grow quieter, adults more focused. Not fear or dread, but a collective turning inward that you can feel in the very air. Will the dreamer dance? A child whispers. The elder smiles cryptically. If the spirits wish it. The dreamer, you learn, is the community's shaman, a middle-aged woman who rarely joins hunting or gathering, but serves as bridge between worlds, interpreter of signs and omens. Haven't seen her all morning, someone comments. She's preparing, another answers. Went to the small cave before first light with the sacred herbs. As routine camp activities begin, an undercurrent of anticipation thrums beneath the surface. Several people work on special preparations, grinding red ochre into powder mixed with animal fat to create paint, preparing ceremonial foods distinct from daily meals. Dream root needs longer soaking. Instructs an elder examining a wooden bowl of steeping gnarled roots. Only for the dreamer and vision seekers tonight. This casual remark reveals sophisticated understanding of psychoactive plants, which altered consciousness in what doses with which preparations. Not recreational use, but purposeful spiritual engagement. By mid-morning, a group departs for the sacred place. Unlike practical foraging parties, they move with ceremonial intent, carrying hide-wrapped bundles adorned with feathers and shells. Preparing the sacred circle, explains a young man. Clearing branches, renewing markings. The sacred place lies a short journey from camp, a natural clearing with standing stones arranged in specific patterns. Not Göbekli Tepe's massive pillars, but a humbler version of the same impulse to create ritual space, demarcating ordinary from extraordinary experience. You may come, offers a woman. Stay quiet, follow our lead. The walk proceeds mostly in silence, punctuated by significant observations, a particular bird call, animal tracks, special plants. Not random, but meaningful communications in a landscape alive with spiritual presence. Good sign. Someone murmurs as a hawk circles overhead. The sky powers are watching. At the clearing, standing stones stand in what might appear random arrangement, but clearly hold deep meaning. The group moves reverently among them, clearing debris, renewing painted markings, leaving small offerings, a feather here, a shell there, food scraps at the base of the largest stone. This stone is the ancestor, a gray-haired man explains, who first led our people to this valley generations ago. He indicates others, mountain spirit, river woman, great bear. Each stone embodies complex stories, lessons, and relationships. Mnemonic devices preserving spiritual knowledge without writing. As they work, someone begins rhythmic singing. Others join, creating harmonic textures seemingly emerging from the landscape itself. Wordless vocals rising and falling like surrounding hills. Not happy or sad, but transcending such categories. Sonic expression of connection to something greater. When preparations complete, small ceremonial fires are lit at specific points, not for warmth or cooking, but to create sacred space. Smoke rises straight in still air, forming visible earth-to-sky connections. Now we wait, says the leading elder, for the others and the dreamer. Sitting in growing quiet, you notice time seeming to slow, awareness shifting from doing to being, from survival concerns to something less tangible but equally essential. Why do this? You ask softly. The elder considers deeply. To remember who we are, to speak with those before us, to understand our place, ensuring animals return, plants grow, waters flow clean. These aren't separate goals, but unified understanding of human existence embedded in webs of relationship with ancestors, other species, the land itself. What we might call religion wasn't separate from life, but the context for all experience. foundation for comprehending existence and proper conduct within it. By midday, the community arrives in family groups bearing food and ceremonial necessities. Children are uncharacteristically subdued, sensing this isn't ordinary time. Elders receive honored seating within the stone circle. New fires are lit, larger than the initial ceremonial flames, but still carefully placed. She comes, someone whispers. All turn toward the forest edge where the dreamer emerges alone. She's transformed, wearing a garment covered in red, black, and white symbols, feathers and bones adorning her hair, face painted with parallel lines altering her very appearance. But most striking is her presence, an intensity bending the air around her. Moving deliberately, she circles the stones before entering. In her hands rests a small drum decorated with symbols matching her garment. The spirits are strong today, she announces in a voice carrying despite its softness. They wish to speak with us. What follows isn't frenzied primitive ritual, but carefully structured ceremony following established patterns. The community arranges in concentric circles with the dreamer at center. Food is distributed ceremonially. First offerings to ancestors at the ancestor stone, then to the living, finally symbolic portions for descendants unborn. This three-part division, honoring past, present, and future, structures subsequent activities, songs and trios, dances moving through three patterns, stories told in threes addressing different temporal dimensions. As sunset approaches, the ritual intensifies. The dreamer begins drumming, simple rhythms growing increasingly complex. Others join, a bone flute, a notched stick rasp, creating interwoven sonic textures. Now we paint our band's story. The dreamer announces when music pauses. Children come forward first, pressing ochre-dipped hands against stones leaving clear prints. Adults follow, then elders, creating layered community records updated annually. Without writing, such physical markings served as historical documentation, tangible connections across generations. Next comes hide surface painting. Not permanent art, but ceremonial creations depicting animals, human figures, and abstract symbols holding clear meaning for observers. The deer that saved us during the Great Snow. Someone explains pointing to one image. The flood that took the old camp, says another indicating wavy lines with tiny figures, before your time. These weren't decorative, but narrative. Visual storytelling preserving crucial history and survival lessons when oral traditions might falter. At full darkness, the moon rises precisely as predicted, greeted with collective awe. The dreamer stands in moonlight, arms raised, her shadow stretching dramatically. The ancestors are with us, she declares. They wish to speak. What follows is the ceremony's most profound segment. The dreamer consumes prepared dream root, as do a few others specifically prepared, before beginning rhythmic movements. Not wild dancing, but controlled motions gradually intensifying as drums and instruments build sonic landscapes around her. Her breathing changes, deeper, more pronounced. Movements become less voluntary, more as if animated by external forces. The community watches utterly focused on her transformation. I see them, she says in an altered voice. They stand at our circle's edge. She begins relaying messages from specific ancestors addressing current concerns, where game moves in changing landscapes, how to respond to the rising river, when to relocate to summer grounds. These aren't vague generalities, but specific guidance delivered with spiritual authority. While modern observers might dismiss this as performance or delusion, anthropological evidence suggests shamans genuinely entered altered states during such rituals, a universal human neurological capacity interpreted differently across cultures. As the dreamer speaks, community members occasionally respond with questions, creating living dead dialogue. There's nothing frightening about this interaction. It feels as natural as any conversation, though conducted with greater reverence. After delivering ancestral messages, the dreamer's trance deepens. Her movements become more fluid, less human. Observers murmur recognition. She walks as bear now. Her motions subtly mimic bear gaits and gestures. not cartoonish imitation, but embodying bare essence as understood within their spiritual framework. This shape-shifting, moving between human and animal consciousness, reflects pre-agricultural understandings of permeable boundaries between species, each possessing knowledge accessible to the other under certain conditions. As night deepens, more community members join aspects of ceremony. Some dance in animal movement patterns. Others share spiritual experiences. Children participate actively or observe from peripheries, absorbing complex symbolic systems that will structure their world understanding. This is how we remember. An elder tells attentive children. The stones hold memories. The paintings hold memories. Our bodies hold memories. So nothing important is lost when we're gone. Without writing, such multisensory participatory rituals were crucial for cultural transmission, engaging not just intellect, but emotional and physical memory to create experiences powerful enough to endure. Around midnight, the ceremony shifts. The dreamer, emerging from deepest trance, leads community creation of new art, not just handprints or past event representations, but images related to spirit guidance received. Temporary creations painted on hides or even human bodies, meant to last only until next significant ceremony. The deer will return to Eastern Valley. The dreamer explains while painting a deer figure with specific markings. When the moon is half again, they'll come with new young. This painting isn't merely commemorative but predictive, capturing spirit world information about future events. When predictions proved accurate, it reinforced the spiritual system. When not, established interpretations explained discrepancies as misinterpretations or changed circumstances. As ceremony continues through night, different members assume active roles, some sharing personal spiritual experiences, others leading ritual sequences. The dreamer remains central but doesn't perform alone. This is communal practice where many have important parts. I dreamed of Great Bear 3 nights ago, shares an older man. She showed me where honey trees will bloom. He describes his dream in detail. The dreamer helps interpret elements holding broader community significance. This reveals another spiritual system aspect. While shamans had special training, ordinary dreams and visions were also valued as potential guidance sources. In deepest night, when the moon has crossed most of sky, the ceremony reaches its most solemn moment. Complete communal silence as fires burn low, the dreamer motionless at circle's center, barely breathing. This profound silence stretches endlessly, not empty but charged with shared attention and accumulated ritual energy. When the dreamer finally speaks again, her voice is soft, yet carries clearly. The world changes faster than our grandparents knew. Ice mountains retreat. New plants grow where old ones thrived. Animals move unpredictably. She's describing observable realities, but framing them spiritually. The ancestors say we must be like the river, finding new paths when old ones close, continuing to flow. This metaphorical guidance, adapting fluidly rather than resisting change, helped communities respond appropriately to environmental shifts they couldn't yet scientifically explain. At dawn's first hint, the ceremony begins winding down. Food shared more casually, formal structures relaxing. People discuss their experiences, interpreting specific moments or images. The deer painting had 7 spots, a woman notes. 7 is powerful. 7 days until we should move camp. This shows how ceremonial content would be analyzed long after the event. Collective meaning-making strengthening social bonds while extracting maximum practical and spiritual value. Children who stayed awake all night now doze against parents. Some adults sleep, while others maintain quiet conversation or contemplative silence watching the growing light. Was it always like this? You ask an elder. The form changes, he reflects. Small differences each time. But the purpose remains, to remember who we are, understand our place, honor what sustains us. This perspective challenges assumptions that prehistoric religions were rigidly traditional. Evidence suggests they were adaptive and responsive while maintaining core principles. As daylight strengthens, the community prepares to return to main camp. ceremonial fires carefully extinguished, items packed for storage in sacred spaces. The stone circle left largely undisturbed except for new handprints and markings until next full moon. Until the next full moon, people say while departing, a ritual phrase simultaneously closing this ceremony and anticipating the next. The return journey is thoughtful and quiet. People walking alone or in small groups processing individual experiences within shared frameworks. Back at camp, normal activities resume, but with subtle difference. A sense of renewal infusing even mundane tasks with deeper meaning. Children who slept through ceremonies end hear stories about what they missed. Dream route participants rest as their experiences become part of collective understanding. The dreamer, now in ordinary clothes with paint washed away, moves through camp checking on those who joined deepest trance work. Just another community member with specialized role like skilled hunters or toolmakers. The ceremony helps us remember what matters, she tells you, noticing your continued interest. Not just with minds, but bodies and hearts. So when hardships come, scarce food or dangers, we know who we are. We remember. We endure. This spiritual practical integration wasn't unique, but common among hunter-gatherers worldwide. Not separate domains, but unified existence where rituals maintained resilience through changing circumstances and unpredictable challenges. Morning comes gently after the ceremony night. The camp remains quiet, as many sleep later than usual. You wake to the soft crackling of someone rebuilding the central hearth fire. It's the young woman who previously mentioned her cousin's experimental planting techniques. She notices your gaze and smiles. Most still sleep, she whispers. The spirit night drains energy. You join her by the fire's warmth, noticing how different the camp feels today. Peaceful yet reflective, as if the ceremony created collective space for contemplation. My mother's sister's daughter arrives today, she mentions while arranging kindling. The one from Southern Hills whose people do strange things with plants. Strange how, you ask? She gestures vaguely. They put seeds in straight lines, clear other plants away, carry water to them when rain fails. She shakes her head. Seems more work than gathering wild growths. This casual conversation touches humanity's most profound transition, the gradual shift from foraging to farming. But 10,000 years ago, this change wasn't happening uniformly. Some communities experimented with cultivation, while others continued proven nomadic patterns that had sustained humans for millennia. As others awaken, the day takes on a different rhythm. Instead of organizing hunting parties, people focus on maintenance tasks near camp, processing stored foods, repairing tools, quietly socializing. After the ceremony's intensity, this day feels more introspective. By mid-morning, visitors appear at the clearing's edge, 3 women and 2 children carrying modest bundles. The expected relatives have arrived. Your companion greets them warmly, embracing the eldest woman. My mother's sister, she explains while leading them into camp. The community welcomes the newcomers without fanfare, but with genuine hospitality, offering food, helping erect a temporary shelter, seamlessly incorporating them into the social fabric. The eldest visitor carries something intriguing, a carefully handled woven bag. After greetings, she opens it to show the elders. Seeds from our special grass, she explains. The ones we tend. Their seed heads grow larger than wild kin. The elders examine the contents with interest, though some skepticism. These are early domesticates, plants changed through human selection, but not yet dramatically different from wild ancestors. Will they grow here? An elder asks. Our soil has more clay. Worth trying, the visitor replies. They've thrived in 3 different places we've planted them. This exchange captures early agriculture's essence: experimentation, knowledge sharing, and local adaptation. The first farmers weren't following manuals, but inventing techniques through trial and error, gradually understanding what worked in specific environments. As the day progresses, conversations between visitors and hosts increasingly focus on these agricultural experiments. The southern group hasn't fully transitioned to farming. They still hunt and gather most food, but have begun deliberately planting select species, tending them seasonally, choosing desirable specimens for replanting. We noticed some grain plants bore bigger seeds, the visitor explains to an interested group. So we collected those specifically and replanted them near camp. Next season, more plants had larger seeds. This simple description encapsulates early selective breeding, humans noticing and favoring specific traits, gradually altering plant genetics through generations of selection. Not based on genetic theory, but practical observation of results. We've tried it with root plants too, adds a younger visitor, choosing the largest to replant pieces. Some now grow as thick as a man's forearm. While these discussions continue, another agricultural development appears at camp's edge. A young wolf-like creature lies calmly near a shelter. Not quite wolf anymore, a camp member explains, noticing your curiosity. His ancestors started staying near our fires generations ago. The animal, somewhere between wolf and dog, represents another profound change occurring in some human communities. Animal domestication began not through capturing wild adults, but through generations of selection for tolerance to human proximity. A child approaches and the creature responds with wagging tail. Not quite a modern pet, but no longer fully wild either. He warns of strangers, the child boasts, and helps track wounded deer. This mutually beneficial relationship would eventually transform both species. Later, discussion turns to another emerging practice. An elder mentions noticing wild goats returning to the same meadows annually. If we built brush fences in that narrow valley, he suggests, we could keep some from wandering. Have meat nearer when needed. This idea, not yet implemented but seriously considered, represents early thinking that would lead to animal husbandry. Not capturing wild herds, but subtly manipulating their movements, gradually increasing control over their breeding and behavior. The hill people south of the Great Lake do that with sheep, offers a visitor. Build stone enclosures to keep them in one meadow, taking just a few for meat, letting others breed. These knowledge exchanges were crucial to agricultural development, ideas spreading along trade and kinship networks, adapting to local conditions. There was no single invention of agriculture, but thousands of small parallel innovations across communities. As evening approaches, the combined group prepares a meal together. The visitors contribute some cultivated grain, which they grind and bake into simple flatbread on heated stones. It's offered for all to taste, sparking discussion. Tastes sweeter than wild grain, someone remarks. But is it worth the tending work? Counters another. When wild grains grow freely for those who know where to look. This practical assessment highlights a crucial point. Early agriculture wasn't automatically superior to foraging in all circumstances. In many environments, traditional gathering remained more efficient than early cultivation attempts. The shift toward farming occurred first where conditions made it comparatively advantageous. During the meal, visitors explained they're spending more time in fixed locations to tend their plants. We still move seasonally, clarifies the eldest visitor, but always return to the plant grounds when tending's needed. This represents another transition, from full nomadism to patterns incorporating seasonal sedentism. Not year-round settlement yet, but repeated returns to cultivation sites, which gradually modified the landscape through human activity. The plants thrive where we've tended them seasons, notes a younger visitor. The soil changes where we plant continually. After eating, storytelling begins around the central fire. Unlike the previous night's ceremonial intensity, this is casual social exchange. A visitor shares news from her region. 3 days south, she begins. A group builds strange things, stone houses that don't move. She describes structures of stacked stone with mud mortar and pole and mud roofs. They say they must stay year-round to tend their plants, too many now to leave unattended. This illustrates another agricultural consequence, increasing scale from small plots to fields requiring continuous attention. As cultivation investments grew, so did the necessity for sedentism. Do they still hunt? Someone asks. Some, the visitor replies. But they keep small goats in stone pens now. Say it's easier than hunting when wild herds wander. The conversation explores this lifestyle's pros and cons. Some express skepticism about vulnerability to localized food failures or dangers. Others note potential benefits for the very young and old who struggle with frequent moves. What's striking is the discussion's thoughtfulness, people weighing options, considering implications, sharing observations. This wasn't blind stumbling into agriculture, but conscious evaluation of choices based on circumstances and values. As evening deepens, talk turns to practical matters. Next day's plans, preparations for the coming seasonal move, weather observations. Agricultural discussions integrate naturally with these concerns, one possible strategy among many being considered. Before retiring, a camp leader asks the visitors about their seeds. Where would be best to plant these here? This sparks detailed discussion of soil types, sunlight, water access, and animal protection. The community considering limited adoption of this innovation alongside traditional practices. We could clear that flat area near the spring, suggests someone. Gets full sun. Need thorn barriers to keep animals out, adds another. This planning shows early agriculture's typical implementation, not as wholesale replacement of foraging, but as supplementary strategy, an additional security measure rather than complete system overhaul. As people settle for the night, there's quiet excitement about tomorrow's project, creating a small experimental garden. Not a revolutionary act, but a cautious test of new approaches undertaken with practical curiosity rather than ideological commitment. This is how agriculture likely began in many places. Not as sudden revolution, but through countless small experiments and adaptations that gradually shifted how communities obtained food. The full implications, permanent settlements, population growth, property concepts, social stratification, weren't visible to those first experimenters. They were simply trying to enhance food security in a changing environment. In your shelter that night, listening to fading hearthside conversations, you might reflect on how differently we understand this transition compared to those living through it. With hindsight, we see agriculture as civilization's foundation. For them, it was just one of many adaptive strategies being explored, neither inevitable nor accidental, but human ingenuity responding to specific challenges and opportunities. The world they would ultimately create through generations of such small decisions is our world, though transformed almost beyond recognition by cumulative changes they couldn't have imagined. 10 millennia separate us from them, roughly 400 human generations. Biologically, we're nearly identical. What's changed dramatically is the world we've built around those constant human needs and capacities. Perhaps their greatest legacy is the reminder that human choices matter, that small adaptations and decisions by ordinary people accumulate into transformative change. They couldn't have envisioned industrial agriculture any more than early settlers could imagine megacities. Yet these modern realities grew organically from such humble beginnings. And as sleep approaches, you might wonder what those early cultivators would think of our world, with its monoculture fields, industrial food systems, and profound disconnection from natural processes. Would they see it as their experiment's fulfillment, or something alien to their understanding of humanity's place in the living world? Morning mist lingers low over the camp, softening edges and muffling sounds. You wake slowly, comfortably warm beneath your furs despite the crisp dawn air. For a moment, you simply lie still, listening to the steady breathing of others around you, the distant calls of birds, the whisper of leaves in the breeze. Days have passed since the planting experiment. The visitors have moved on, continuing their journey to share knowledge with other camps. Life has settled back into its rhythms. Hunting, gathering, tool-making, food preparation. The endless cycle that sustains the community through changing seasons. Yet something subtle has shifted. The newly planted garden is checked daily, watered when needed, protected from foraging animals. Children peer eagerly at the soil, watching for the first green shoots. More importantly, conversations now stretch beyond immediate needs, considering possibilities that extend beyond the next seasonal move. If the seeds grow well, you overhear someone say as you rise and move toward the central hearth, we might clear a larger area the next spring. These aren't declarations of revolutionary change, but quiet speculations, tentative steps toward a different relationship with the land. Near the fire, an elder sits with children, using a stick to sketch in the soft earth. You recognize the winding line as the nearby river, with marks indicating familiar landmarks. Here is where we are now, he explains, making a circular mark. Here is the summer camp we moved to when the moon has been full twice more. Another mark farther along. And here is where we go when leaves begin to turn. He's teaching the annual migration pattern, the knowledge that ensures the community is in the right place at the right time to harvest seasonal resources. This isn't aimless wandering, but a sophisticated adaptation to the landscape's temporal and spatial rhythms. But what if we stayed here? A child asks, pointing to the first mark, like the seed-growing people. The elder doesn't dismiss the question, but considers it carefully. If we stayed, we'd miss the salmon run at the summer camp and the autumn nuts near the winter grounds. We'd need to find all our food in one place, through all seasons. This simple explanation holds profound ecological understanding. The recognition that mobility allows hunter-gatherers to harvest resources where and when they're most abundant. Sedinism would require either finding an exceptionally rich environment or altering the land to produce enough year-round. Could we grow enough seeds to replace the salmon and nuts? The child persists. Perhaps, the elder replies. That's what some groups are learning. But it would mean changing many things about how we live. This conversation, speculative, open-ended, without definitive answers, reflects how communities likely navigated the emerging possibilities of agriculture, not as an obvious improvement to adopt unquestioningly, but as a complex set of trade-offs to evaluate based on circumstances and values. As you join the group by the fire, accepting a warm herbal drink, the elder acknowledges you with a nod and continues his lesson. Our way of moving with the seasons has sustained us for more generations than anyone can count. Our ancestors learned which plants grow where, which animals appear when, how to read the signs telling us when to move. This knowledge keeps us alive. His words underscore that hunter-gatherer lifestyles weren't primitive, but represented highly refined ecological adaptations. Thousands of years of accumulated wisdom encoded in cultural practices, stories, and direct teaching. But the world changes, he adds after a thoughtful pause. The ice mountains our grandparents' knew are gone. New plants grow where they didn't before. Animals move differently. We must watch, learn, and sometimes try new ways. This acknowledgement of environmental change and the need for adaptive responses captures a fundamental truth about human existence. 10,000 years ago, communities were experiencing dramatic climate shifts as the last ice age receded, requiring flexibility and innovation rather than rigid adherence to tradition. As the day progresses, you join a gathering party heading to check the garden and collect early summer berries. The conversation as you walk continues the reflective tone of the morning. My grandmother said people and plants made an agreement long ago. An older woman remarks while deftly plucking ripe berries. We would carry their seeds to new places, they would feed us. Both would spread farther than either could alone. This perspective, seeing agriculture not as human domination of nature but as mutualism, reflects how many traditional cultures understood domestication. Modern research increasingly supports this view, showing how some plants effectively chose domestication by evolving traits that made them attractive to human cultivators. The seeds in our garden, adds another gatherer, they're changing to suit us, growing bigger, tasting sweeter. And we're changing to suit them, staying longer in one place, giving them water, protecting them from animals that would eat them. This insight, that domestication reshaped both plants and humans, captures the essence of the agricultural transition. People weren't just imposing their will on passive nature, but entering into relationships that transformed both parties. When you reach the garden plot, there's palpable excitement. Tiny green shoots have emerged from several spots in the carefully tended soil, the first visible proof that the planting experiment is working. People crouch around the plot, examining the delicate seedlings with wonder. They found their way to the light. Someone murmurs reverently. This moment reveals another dimension of early agriculture, not just calculated resource management, but an emotional and even spiritual connection to cultivated plants. The miracle of seeds transforming into sustenance has resonated through human culture from these first experiments to modern times. After tending the garden, the group continues to a berry patch. As you pick fruit alongside the others, conversations flow between practical observations and deeper reflections. These taste better than the garden plants will, one woman remarks, popping a sun-warmed berry into her mouth. Wild foods always do, but there are never enough, counters another. Not to feed everyone through lean times. This exchange encapsulates a central tension in the agricultural transition, the trade-off between quality and quantity. Wild foods often offered superior nutrition and flavor, but cultivated crops could be produced more reliably and abundantly. Different communities would resolve this tension in different ways based on their environments and needs. My cousin's people, the ones who stay to tend plants year-round, they're changing in other ways too, a younger woman observes. They gather more things, larger shelters, more tools than they can carry, special containers for storing food through winter. This comment highlights another consequence of sedentism, the accumulation of material possessions beyond what nomadic life could support. Archaeological evidence confirms this pattern, with permanent settlements showing far greater artifact density than temporary camps. And they argue more about who owns what, the woman adds, since they can't just take everything if they need to move quickly. This offhand remark touches on one of agriculture's most profound social impacts, the strengthening of property concepts and the potential for increased inequality. When constant movement limited material accumulation, disparities were naturally constrained. Sedentism removed those limits, allowing wealth differentials to emerge. By the time you return to camp with berries and other gathered foods, the afternoon is waning. Hunters have also returned with small game already being prepared. Normal rhythms resume. Food processing, tool maintenance, childcare, storytelling, but with that same undercurrent of contemplation. Near the central hearth, an intriguing project unfolds. Several people collaborate on a detailed landscape model using sand, stones, and twigs, a three-dimensional map showing hills, waterways, and resource locations. If we plant more gardens, someone suggests, placing a marker near a river bend, this flat area would be ideal. Good sun, rich soil. Too far from good hunting grounds. Another objects, pointing elsewhere. We need meat as well as plants. This practical planning session, using physical models to analyze complex spatial relationships, demonstrates the cognitive sophistication of these communities. Without writing or formal mathematics, they engaged in detailed environmental assessment and long-term strategizing. As evening approaches, the community gathers for the main meal. Unlike the ceremonial sharing nights earlier, this is an ordinary communal dinner, yet still characterized by equitable distribution, with special consideration for the young, old, and those with particular needs. Conversations around the fire remain thoughtful, returning to themes that have emerged throughout the day. The experimental garden, environmental changes, different adaptation strategies being tried across regions. There's no sense of impending revolution, just people thinking together about how best to navigate evolving circumstances. The dreamers spoke of change, someone recalls, referencing the shaman's ceremony words. Said we must be like the river, finding new paths when old ones close. This metaphorical guidance, adapting fluidly rather than resisting change, reflects a common hunter-gatherer worldview. Resilience often came through flexibility rather than rigidity, through responsive adjustment rather than fixed solutions. As darkness fully settles, the fire is built up one last time. The teaching elder from Morning Now addresses the gathered community, not with formal authority, but as someone whose perspective is valued. We've lived by following the land's rhythms, he says, voice carrying easily in the quiet. Moving as animals move, as plants grow and ripen, as waters rise and fall. Our grandparents did this, and there's before them, back to our oldest stories. He pauses, gazing into the flames. The community waits patiently, comfortable with silence in a way that's become rare in our hurried modern world. Now some are finding different ways, he continues. bringing plants to them instead of going to plants, keeping animals nearby instead of hunting where they roam, building shelters that don't move with seasons. Another pause, filled with murmurs of acknowledgement, not wholehearted endorsement, but recognition that these changes are indeed occurring in the wider world they're connected to through kinship and trade. We don't have to choose just one way, he concludes. We can learn from what others try. Take what serves us well, leave what doesn't. The world changes. We change with it. This is how we've always survived. This perspective, pragmatic, adaptable, open to innovation while valuing traditional knowledge, likely characterized many communities navigating this transitional era. Not ideological commitments to either progress or tradition, but practical evaluations of what worked best in specific circumstances. As formal talking concludes, the evening dissolves into quieter conversations, pairs and small groups sharing thoughts about these matters. Children are settled for sleep, final daily tasks completed. The general movement is toward rest, though some will remain awake through the night, tending the fire, keeping watch, ensuring community safety. In your shelter again, wrapped in now familiar furs, you might reflect on the journey you've taken, not just through this community's daily life, but through a pivotal moment in human history. These people didn't know they were living through what future historians would call the agricultural revolution. They were simply doing what humans have always done, observing, problem-solving, sharing knowledge, adapting to change. The world they helped create through generations of such small decisions would eventually become our world, though transformed almost beyond recognition by cumulative changes they couldn't have foreseen. 10 millennia separate us from them, roughly 400 human generations. Biologically, we're nearly identical. What's changed dramatically is the world we've built around those constant human needs and capacities. Perhaps their greatest legacy is the reminder that human choices matter, that small, everyday decisions by ordinary people accumulate into civilizational transformations. They couldn't have imagined our industrialized agriculture any more than we can fully envision the consequences of our own technological revolutions. And as sleep finally claims you, listening to the last quiet voices at the dying fire, you might carry forward their elders' wisdom, the balance between honoring what sustains us and being willing to find new paths when old ones close. The first light of dawn creeps across the camp, painting the tops of shelters in pale gold while mist still clings to the lowlands. You emerge from your shelter to find a community already stirring with quiet purpose. Today carries special significance. The summer solstice, when the sun pauses at its northernmost point before beginning its slow retreat toward winter. An elder approaches, her face illuminated by the rising sun. The longest day deserves our finest efforts, she says, handing you a basket woven from fresh reeds. The garden needs harvesting, and the berries won't wait. There's a sparkle in her eyes that speaks of ancient knowledge passed down through countless solstices. The garden you helped plant weeks ago now stands waist-high, its grain head swollen with promise. As you run your fingers through the stalks, their golden tips brushing your palms, you realize this modest plot represents something revolutionary. The first tentative steps toward controlling food sources rather than simply following them. Watch how we do it, instructs a woman with sun-browned hands. She demonstrates the harvesting technique, grasping a handful of stems and slicing them with a sharp flint blade just below the seed heads. Leave the stalks standing. They'll return to the earth and feed next year's growth. This sustainable practice, developed through generations of observation, shows how early agriculturalists worked with natural cycles rather than against them. As you work alongside the others, the rhythmic motion of harvesting becomes almost meditative. The satisfying rustle of grain heads tumbling into baskets blends with the hum of conversation and occasional laughter. Nearby, children help by collecting stray seeds that fall to the ground. Like the ants do, explains a boy no more than 6 summers old, carefully placing each precious kernel in his small pouch. This casual remark reveals how closely these early farmers observed nature's patterns, learning storage techniques from the insect world. By midday, the harvest is gathered and the baskets overflowing. The community pauses to share a simple meal of flatbread and smoked fish beneath the shade of a massive oak. The bread, made from last year's harvest, connects the cycle of seasons. What was planted then sustains you now, just as today's harvest will feed future generations. The seeds are bigger this year, observes an elder, rolling a plump kernel between his fingers. Stronger too. This incremental improvement, the result of unconscious selection pressure, represents the slow alchemy of domestication in action. Each generation's choice to replant the best seeds gradually transformed wild grasses into reliable crops. As the sun reaches its zenith, the entire community gathers at the standing stones. The dreamer stands at the center, her ceremonial garb adorned with symbols of sun and earth. In her hands rests a basket containing selected seeds from the harvest, the chosen ones that will be planted next season. We return what was given, she intones, scattering some seeds at the base of each stone. We honor the cycle that sustains us. This ritual planting blends practical seed saving with spiritual thanksgiving, a reminder that for these early agriculturalists, the material and sacred were inseparable. The afternoon passes in joyful labor. Some members prepare the harvest for storage, parching grains to prevent spoilage, sealing them in waterproof baskets lined with clay. Others work on improving storage pits, using fire to harden the walls against moisture and pests. These technological innovations emerge directly from the new needs created by agriculture. As evening approaches, the mood shifts toward celebration. Great fires are lit, and the aroma of roasting meats and simmering grains fills the air. The children, their faces painted with red ochre designs, perform a dance mimicking the growth of plants, stretching toward the sky, swaying in imaginary wind, finally bending under the weight of ripe seeds. The elder who taught you about migration patterns earlier now sits at the central fire, surrounded by listeners of all ages. Long ago, he begins, when the world was young and the ice still covered the northern lands, our ancestors followed the herds across vast plains. His hands move as if painting pictures in the air. Then the world warmed, and the great herds departed or changed their ways. He pauses to sip from a wooden cup. Some of our people followed the new animals that came. Others learned the ways of forests that grew where ice had been. And a few, his eyes twinkle in the firelight, began to ask the plants to stay with us. This simplified origin story encapsulates millennia of human adaptation to climate change. As the stars emerge, the dreamer leads the community in a new ceremony. Each person comes forward to place a handful of seeds into a special basket woven with symbols of continuity. These will sleep through winter, she explains, and wake when the earth grows warm again. The careful selection and preservation of seed stock represents another crucial step in humanity's agricultural journey. Later, as the celebration winds down, you find yourself sitting with a small group near one of the smaller fires. A young mother nurses her baby while an adolescent boy carefully carves a flute from a length of bone. The conversation turns to practical matters: how to protect next year's garden from birds, whether to expand the planting area, which new plants might be worth cultivating. We could try putting sharp sticks around the edges, suggests the boy between flute carving strokes. Like that thorn bush that keeps the deer away. The people near the big river plant different things together, offers the young mother. Say some plants help others grow better. This early understanding of companion planting shows the depth of observational knowledge these early farmers were accumulating. As night deepens, you notice something remarkable happening. The elder who told the migration story earlier is now teaching some children how to make notches on a length of wood. Each mark is a moon, he explains. When we've made 12, it will be time to prepare the garden again. This simple calendar, tied to agricultural cycles, represents one of humanity's first attempts to quantify and predict time beyond seasonal patterns. The flute-carving boy begins to play a soft, haunting melody. Others join in with drums and rattles. The music isn't the complex compositions of later civilizations, but something more elemental, rhythms and tones that mimic natural sounds, yet arranged in ways distinctly human. This too is part of the agricultural revolution, the flowering of arts and culture made possible by more reliable food supplies. As you finally prepare to sleep, the elder catches your eye. "You've seen much since coming among us," he says quietly. "The old ways and the new growing together, like different plants in the same field." His analogy is apt. The community isn't abandoning its hunter-gatherer roots, but supplementing them with carefully selected innovations. In the days that follow, life returns to its regular rhythms, but with subtle differences. The successful harvest has given people more confidence in the gardening experiment. Plans are made to expand the cultivated area next season, though the community will still follow its traditional migration pattern to take advantage of wild resources. The seeds saved from the harvest are divided, some to be eaten during lean times, most to be planted next season. They're stored in multiple locations to guard against loss, showing the pragmatic risk management of people still partly dependent on nature's whims. As you watch the children playing a game that involves both hunting pretend animals and tending imaginary gardens, you realize this community stands at a crossroads. Not yet fully agricultural, but no longer purely hunter-gatherers. They're crafting a middle path that draws on the strengths of both lifestyles. On your final morning, as you prepare to continue your journey, the elder presents you with a small pouch. "Seeds from our garden," he explains. "Plant them where you think they might grow, and remember us." The simple gift carries profound meaning, an invitation to participate in the great experiment of agriculture, to become part of the chain that links past and future. As you walk away from the settlement, the pouch resting securely in your carrying bag, you realize these people couldn't have imagined how their small acts, selecting seeds, tending plants, sharing knowledge, would accumulate over generations to transform human civilization. They were simply doing what people have always done, finding ways to feed their families and communities while making sense of a changing world. The path ahead leads through landscapes both familiar and strange, past hunting camps where people still follow the old ways, near new settlements where mud brick houses cluster together, across territories where different groups are experimenting with their own variations on the agricultural theme. Each step takes you farther from the small community that taught you so much, yet their lessons travel with you, in the seeds you carry, the techniques you've learned, and most importantly, in the new understanding of how profound change often begins with small, practical adaptations rather than grand designs. And as your journey continues beneath the same sun that shone on those first farmers 10,000 years ago, you carry forward their legacy, not as historical curiosities, but as fellow humans who faced their own version of the eternal challenge: how to live well in a world that never stops changing.